Alright, so in today's news, the old man finally kicked the bucket um, last night. So I picked up Gracie after school yesterday, and then we went over to her house because I figured if I mentioned to either of my parents that I was hanging out with her, that they would try to coerce me into taking her over there to spend time with my grandfather as he was dying. And my brother and I are kind of hypersensitive about keeping her out of that situation. It's kind of funny because my mom was readily available to, well, kept saying continuously she was readily available to go pick up Gracie whenever my sister-in-law's mom was in the process of going. But I feel pretty confident that they would have tried, because they did keep trying to get them to take her over there to visit him and all that stuff. But I figured if my dad picked her up, he'd probably just take her straight over to my grandparents' house yesterday. So I didn't even tell him that I'd talked to my brother about picking her up. I just went and picked her up, and then we went to her house and played hide and seek for a while. When my brother and his wife got back home, they said that they were wanting to go over to my grandparents' house one last time, well, to see my grandpa one last time, and asked if I would mind hanging out with the kid again while they did that. She had her dance class before that, and they said that once they brought her home, they were planning to get ready to go over there and all that. So I said that was fine, and had time to watch my earlier video and get it uploaded while she was in her dance class, or get it started on the uploading process while she was in the dance class. And then I went back over there after that, let me know that they were on their way, and yeah, Gracie and I watched Meet the Robinsons while my brother and his wife went to my grandparents' house to see my grandfather one last time. And it was actually like the perfect timing with the length of the movie. Like, we started it when they were getting ready to leave, and then it was ending as they got back. So it ended up lining up perfect on that end. And they brought us dinner back, so we ate while I was over there. When they were in line to pick up the food at Taco Bell, my mom called me and asked me to get the stethoscope out of the drawer in my bedroom, because I have a dresser in there that Gracie's got a couple drawers in it, and then my mom has some stuff in another drawer. And she had a stethoscope from when she was working in the heart hospital, all that fun stuff, and so she wanted me to bring it over. So I figured it was probably pretty close to happening at that point. And it was literally, my brother sent me the text that they were over there waiting in line, and then my mom called me almost immediately afterwards, and I said, I'm not at home. And she said, where are you? And it's like, with Gracie. And she's like, oh yeah. So she said, well, I'll just call your dad. And so she did that, and my brother and his wife get back home. We all sit down to eat, and then my dad sends the message that he died. So yeah, we were kind of talking about it. Of course, my brother and I obviously have some mixed feelings on everything, as we've had to basically heal from family systems that he made sure to keep in place for our entire lifetime. And yeah, we're going to have to work on explaining things a little bit better to make it clear what's going on for Gracie, while also not letting her just pick up on the relief of the fact that it's finally over with, and make it an exciting thing. Yay, he's dead. That's because that was kind of how she was taking it. It's like, whoa, dude. That's not going to be a good way to be around the family at a funeral. So, yeah. Anyway, I was impressed that he did it yesterday and not on my mom's birthday, because of course my mom sent us all a message in the group chat saying that the hospice nurse said it would not be a week, and it might be, or it was more likely it would happen in the next 24 hours. Well, today is my mom's birthday and my sister-in-law's birthday, so I guess my mom finally told him he wasn't allowed to die on her birthday, so he went ahead and got it over with last night. But I was kind of expecting that he was holding out for the birthday, to be honest, because then he could literally hijack the whole season, because, Thanksgiving, he ended up back in the hospital for a few more days, and, all of Thanksgiving, they weren't sure he was going to make it that day. But of course he rallied around, because my mom and her sisters and my grandma were over there. And then, he came home night before last on hospice, and he was saying that, he was going home to die the next day. He handled that. And my brother and I were like, it would be sad, but it would also be fitting if he did it on my mom's birthday, because she was so wrapped up in his bullshit that she was, ultimately one of the worst at perpetuating the toxic cycles that, he perpetuated with his kids. So, yeah. It was a hot mess. Anyway, so last night, my mom sends me a message a little while later, like it's probably an hour after he passed, and I was still over talking with my brother and sister-in-law, and I had taken a couple things. I got my collection of rocks, of course, but I got a few more last week. There's like this pink aventurine necklace it was just a little pendant that I picked up, and I felt really drawn to this thing. It's like, this thing has to come with me. It's like, I don't know exactly why yet, but it's coming with me. But what it was for was like, it said stress, worry, something else on that line. And like, I was wandering around and I found another peach aventurine thing. It was a worry stone. So I got that and a few other little things for my brother, and I was thinking, it's like, I feel like they're going to need these in dealing with the family for the next little bit. So yesterday I went ahead and gave the things to them as early birthday presents, basically. My brother got the worry stone and some other little rocks, and then Jen got a necklace with the peach aventurine stone. And yeah, they had them with them when they went over there last night too, so that was helpful. Good timing on that end. But then we decided to go ahead and have these little they got these little cheesecake desserts for the birthdays. Well, of course my mom and Jen have the same birthday, but Mom's obviously not going to be up for celebrating anything anytime soon. So we went ahead and had the little desserts over there after we ate. And then my mom said that my grandma requested I stop by. It's like, And I didn't want to. But of course I did anyway. And when I got there, it was kind of annoying, to be honest, which I hadn't expected it would be any other way, right? So I walk in, there's a hospice nurse there, there's my parents, my grandma, my both aunts and uncles, and one of my cousins. And my mom's youngest sister and her husband and their son were in the dining room most of the time that I was there. My grandma was sitting next to my mom on the couch. My dad was in my grandma's recliner that's like right next to the couch where my mom was sitting. And it's like, because they put the hospital bed in there, the couch is really awkwardly placed. And it's a tight squeeze at the moment. I mean, it's a big ass couch, so they could fit 2 more people on there. But it's still a tight squeeze in the room. So I walk in, and the body's still there. And I don't know if they were trying to hold out until I got there so I could say my respects or whatever. I went over and sat down on the couch by my grandma, but not right immediately next to her. You could have fit another person in between us. And it wasn't entirely intentional to sit that far away, but kind of not. Yeah, it was fitting. Let's just put it that. That was just where my butt landed when I started sitting that way and wasn't trying to sit right immediately on next to her. And I looked at him, and honestly, it didn't look anything like him. Of course, he didn't have his teeth in, and then his jaw was all sinking in, and at that time, it was just like, I felt like they held out on having the hospice nurse call for the funeral home to come pick him up because they were expecting that I should have a moment or something, and it's just, nope. And so I just kind of looked from across the room, and there's like, not a whole bunch, because it's like, it was really awkward. It just didn't look, honestly, like him. Anyway, so, yeah. When I walked in, my uncle was standing there leaning against the entryway, and he did the thing that I don't like, where he pats me on the back. And I've said before, it's like, when anybody, especially my dad and my uncle, if they pat me on the back or anything, it's just like, there's this whole body shudder, and like, I can't, that whole feeling, like even just thinking about it, yeah. But I did that in front of him. In my lifetime, it has not always been that noticeable, and now it's like very noticeable when I do it, because it's just like, fuck off me, do not touch me, do not ever fucking touch me. And I think I'm probably going to have to actually say it before they get the picture. But it's just that I think because energetically speaking, nobody has boundaries, and so it just feels like when they pat you on the back, like their whole energy is just trying to get in there and consume you and pull you back into the toxicness of the family. And no, not doing that. So yeah, I want no part of anybody touching me and my family. And that's not new. I haven't appropriately verbalized it for most of my life, and actually at all. However, it's getting a lot more obvious, and it's going to come out soon. But yeah. So he did that. I did the shudder thing, and it was noticeable. And I'm pretty sure just about everybody that noticed me walked in that room noticed that I was doing that, because it was just fuck off, But then I sat down, and it's so irritating. Like, I'm just sitting there listening to all the bullshit, and they're shifting into these happy family memories and how we're so close and you can just tell and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, fuck off. Fuck all the way off with that, y'all. I don't give a shit. So my grandma started telling a story, and then my uncle butt in over the top of it, and he's notorious for not being able to know, okay, like if somebody's talking, he just butts over the top of it and does his own thing until nobody ever says anything. They just talk trash about him behind his back. It's like nobody likes him because he literally, I mean, that's an all the time thing, and he feels like he has to talk about everything, and most of it is shit that he's heard secondhand anyway. Like, okay, once upon a time, okay, when I was in high school, it was my senior year, I was getting ready to walk out the door to go to school, and I look over it, and we have the 75-gallon aquarium in the family room, and my dad's standing there, and he's got his hand in the fish tank, and he's talking to the fish. He's like, come on, big guy, you can do it. I was like, what in the hell is going on over there? And apparently, okay, so we had these iridescent sharks that we had like most of my life, and 75-gallon tank was not big enough for them. I realized later, but it's what we had. So we have these fish that were like, I want to say like 14 to 16 inches in length, and like these two big fish in this aquarium. And every now and then iridescent sharks do this weird thing where they just kind of like get real darty and start like crashing into everything. Apparently one of them had gotten out of the tank, and we figured they probably were both going spastic and collided in the corner, and one ended up on the back of the couch. So my dad had found it before he went to work, so he put it back in the tank and was trying to bring it back around. It did work. But I told that story to my family, obviously, because what the hell's going on? I don't know what's happening here. But everybody knew we had these massive fish, so everybody knew what I was talking about. And that fish actually went on, I think he made it to 24. I don't know how old he was when he got out of the tank, but I want to say it was probably another 3 or 4 years that he lived after that, before he finally died. Well, and then I don't know that it was that one that died. It might have been the other one. They're fish, yeah. And they looked mostly the same. Few little differences, but most of the time weren't looking that close. But anyway, like, I want to say 6 or 7 years after this happened, my uncle comes over and starts telling me this story. And it's like, yeah, I know, I was there. It's my story. And like, that was the last time I heard him do that. But it was like, the fuck, dude? I know this story. Why are you telling me my own story? Just shut up. So yeah, that was the whole thing. But he's notorious for that. And it gets on everybody's nerves, obviously. But because he's still in the family, we don't do boundaries, right? We don't tell people that they need to just sit there and hush. They don't have to say something just because they feel the need to say something, or whatever. So my grandma starts telling the story. My uncle butts in over the top of it with something else, and he finishes his story, and then my grandma starts up again, and she's obviously annoyed that he just did this, but when she starts talking again, he starts getting ready to go in on something else again, so she raises her voice and like emphasizes the point that she's telling her story this time, and he hushed at that point. But still, it was a whole thing. It's just silly. But yeah, that's typical family drama. Anyway, my grandma starts in on telling these stories that just go to show how close this family is. We've always been close, and obviously you can tell because, we're half of us are, most of us are neighbors, and blah, blah, blah. And, oh, yeah. She starts in on the happy family bullshit, and I'm just like, yeah, let's just dial it back. I just don't even give a shit. And I was trying to figure out a time frame that I could, it's like, how long do I have to stay here before I can just bow out, right? But my uncle was still leaning in the doorway, and I really didn't want to walk past him again. But my grandma starts talking to the hospice nurse about when Gracie was learning to talk. She started calling my grandfather Donnie. And he just thought it was the greatest thing in the world and told my brother not to correct her on it or anything. And that was, the nickname at that point. And so she's talking about this story and then how she just became Donnie Glenda because, that's how Gracie started calling him, so that's what we rolled with, right? Which is funny because it actually just also opened it up where me and my brother are more inclined to call our grandparents by their first names. So yeah, the younger cousins always called my grandfather Pappy, and I don't know which one of them started that and how it came about and stuck, but it's like anybody that said something to me or referred to him that way, if it wasn't my cousins, if it was like an aunt or somebody referring to your pappy, it's like, that's not my pappy. It's like, we were not that close. It was like, that was my grandfather, and that's pretty much the extent of it. I called him grandpa, sure, but at this point in time I've disconnected enough that he is strictly my grandfather. So, yeah. But, so my grandma started in on the Gracie thing. And then she goes to start talking about my brother and how he was the first grandkid and the first boy, and he was just something special. And then she immediately reaches over to pat me on the leg basically like she's done my whole life, like, oh, we know you're still here, we know you exist, you're okay too, but we're bragging on him right now. It's like, fuck off with this nonsense. I don't need this bullshit. And I'm sitting there talking to my brother in the meantime. It's like, okay, so, yeah, we're doing the happy family bullshit, and now we're talking about how Gracie started calling him Donnie and blah, blah, blah. I said, and now we're talking about you. And he's like, oh. It's like, why? And I told him exactly what happened on that end. He's like, oh, sorry. It's like, it's not you. It's never been you. It's like, that was just how it was made clear from a very early age that he was the favorite, and they were always going to brag on him that way, and I was just chopped liver, and it's just like, I'm used to that, right? At this point, duh. I already know where I stand with this family, so yeah, that's not the concern. But still, it was just kind of an annoying thing, and about this time, I kind of, go within, and I'm like, so if we could just get my uncle out of the way so I can bow out gracefully, that'd be great, because I'm ready to be done here. And about that time, my uncle goes into the kitchen to show I think my other uncle or my aunt something on his phone. I just get up quietly, walk through the room, turn and walk out the door. And I hear somebody say, "Is she leaving?" as I shut the door behind me. I go get in the car and back out of the driveway, and there it is. But the hospice nurse had called the funeral home at that point and they said they would be there within 60 minutes to an hour and a half. So I was trying to make sure I was out of there before then anyway, because I wasn't sure where everything stood on that end with the way the driveway was parked again. And the only slot for me to park was in the empty space. And it's like, well, it makes sense that they would leave a space for the funeral home to come in and wheel them out. But at the same time, I had to park somewhere. Because I was on the way back home and I didn't walk over there. It was fucking cold last night. I wouldn't have walked anyway. So just got up and walked out. And then I get in the car and turn it on, and my phone vibrates in the cup holder. And I saw that it was my brother, and it's like, yeah, I'll deal with that when I get home. So I go home, and I look at the message, and he says, I'd look for an opportunity to leave or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I already did it. I said they started in on that. I said, as soon as Greg moved, I just stood up and walked off and left. And then, a couple minutes later, I get a text message from my mom saying, no goodbye. And I told my brother, and he was like, I'd say no goodbye. I was like, I'm not even going to acknowledge it. Obviously there was no goodbye. I just left. So, yeah. You keep trying to drag me back into this shit that I don't care. I've said many times that back in August, I decided I was done mourning this man's death. And I wasn't sure I would be able to stick with it immediately after his death. But I've actually been holding pretty strong to that. So, which does make sense, because that's literally been my entire life, mourning this man's death. And it's finally over with. So, yay, we can breathe now. Yay, we can start doing something else that, start getting the process of finding a new normal and not just talking about obsessing over his death. So, yeah. I talked to my brother and my friends a little bit, and haven't talked to my cousin yet. I'm positive she knows at this point in time, but I don't know how much she knows, just as far as they're probably trying to get more information as far as the funeral and let her know on that so she can figure out the work stuff and everybody, blah, 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 whatever. I don't know if the one cousin will even be there. I guess that'll be interesting. See whether he shows up or not. But, yeah. Because he was saying for the past 6 years, when he pissed my aunt off in August, and was like, I'll do you one better because it's literally my life. It's like 33 years at least. And yeah, I made that connection the other day. It's like the reason it really started when I was 8 was just because he wasn't around all the time before then. He was in another state. So I didn't have to deal with that one. But then after his dad, after my great-grandfather died, then they moved back up. And I know that my great-grandparents were every bit as responsible as perpetuating the toxic cycles that exist today. But I also know that in spite of all their faults, they were, honestly, probably the last 2 people in my family that actually made me feel loved at any degree, So it's like things were okay until I was 7 and my great-grandpa died, and then everything went to shit. My great-grandma, when she moved back to New Pal, then it was okay, and I loved going over and hanging out with her, whether it was Sundays after church or just whenever, and after my brother used to mow her grass for a long time, and then once he moved away to do the Air Force thing, then I picked that up for a while. And yeah, she lived right next door to the church that we went to at the time, and her oldest daughter, I think it's the oldest, I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it is the oldest. Lived right across the street. They were on this little, it was just a street and had a bunch of houses on it. I guess kind of a little neighborhood, but not a big neighborhood or whatever. I don't know. But they were both next to the church, so yeah. It's like once she died, then it was a little more of a disconnection, I think. So it's like a slow process of me disconnecting from the family, or feeling really disconnected from the family. And yeah, it's like I told my brother, it's like I feel like they kept his body there to force me to have to be in the same room with it, and probably under the guise of giving me the opportunity to say goodbye. Whatever. But it's like, I knew I wanted out of the room before they got there. Just because I wanted the car not in the way. Like, it wouldn't have bothered me to see them hauled off, I guess, but it's just when things kept going the way they were, it's like, I want my uncle to move so I don't have to walk past him, and then I can just cut out and go. And that was exactly what happened. Universe lined it up, so he moved out of the way, and I cut out and went. So, yeah. I got the spiel from my mom earlier. She asked me she said, Grandma wants to know if you started the eulogy she asked you about doing. Now, she did not ask me about doing it. She asked my mom about doing it. My mom relayed the message to me, and I immediately was like, I don't feel like they want me doing that. And I didn't say anything right then, because at that point it would have been, you want me to start writing this man's eulogy and he's not even dead yet. It's like, first off, that feels a little disingenuous to me, so it's like, not feeling that. But then my mom asked me about that this morning, and she sent me like this big spiel of, can I put the clothes in the dryer and find this blanket that's my grandpa's blanket, an IU blanket that's at our house that Grandma wants probably for the funeral. Yeah. And can I find his old high school jacket out of the barn and all this other stuff? It's like, this is a lot of want right at this very moment. And I said, I'm pretty confident I'm not the one you guys want writing this eulogy. And then I said, I've already handled the clothes because I was the one that started doing laundry last night. Not like she would know that because she hasn't been home in several days. But that was on me. Like, my dad was the one that it went from one load of laundry. See, okay, we used to do everything separate, but then we had to get a new washer and dryer, and they're really big, and my mom and I were like combining stuff all the time anyway, so we just started throwing everything together in the hallway, and whoever needs something will get to it. And a lot of it's my stuff right now anyway, so it's like, yes, I'm already on the laundry situation, but it's like, she said that like she started it or something. It's like, no, Dad just got in the way and threw in like a specific load of his stuff it was around the corner. I don't know why he didn't throw everything in the basket in the laundry, because most of it was like his shirts even. But whatever, I'll deal with that later, but it was like, that's always pissed me off. And I think the reason it's always pissed me off, like, okay, I would look at my room, be like, I gotta clean this up. And I would start getting ready to work on it. And she would come in the room and say, you really need to clean this up. And it's like, why do you have to say anything? Now I can't do it. It's like just the sheer act of her telling me I needed to do something made me not be able to do it anymore. It's like, I can only deal with the mess for so long before I got to do something about it. But then she has to come along and like interrupt my progress as I'm like, or my momentum as I'm getting ready to start. And she claims eventually she figured that out and stopped asking me to do stuff. It's like, clearly not, because we're still kind of doing it. And I think she just likes to feel like I'm doing it because she told me to do it. It's like, now I'm just not doing it because you got in the way of me wanting to do it. It's like, but the laundry stuff, it's like, I was already working on that. That's no big deal. I don't care. Most of it is mine because I'm the one that's been home the most over this recent span of time. But she just had to throw it in there. Like I wasn't aware that my dad had thrown something else in the washer. The big thing is, I prefer using like the Gain detergent that we have in the laundry room, and like for the rest of them, they're okay with just these little off-brand soap packets. It's like, I want the stuff that I know is going to make my clothes smell better. So I don't know about this off-brand shit. So if they're doing the laundry, they'll do it with those. If I'm doing it, I do use the other stuff. And I'm separating my stuff out now anyway. This is the last time it's all combined. Just because I don't care that we might have an itty bitty load anymore. It's like, screw it. I don't want my stuff to be wrapped up with theirs any longer. It's like I'm disconnecting in all the ways I possibly can. And like I said, the reason it started and became a collaborative effort was just because the washing machine was so big. It's like, well, we got space, so if you have more to put in, go for it. So, and my mom and I are the ones that wear the bright colors, so obviously not today. Got my 5-finger death punch on. So, yeah. But it was just it's just irritating because it's always been, she just wanted to make sure she threw it out there that I needed to do something, like I was incapable of knowing that it needed to be done without her telling me. It's like, I'm not your husband. No, I can see something needs done, but now that you said that I have to do it, it's like, now I just can't do it just out of spite. It's like, just now that we're rebelling thing. I guess it's been because, for most of my life, that was the only way I could protest, was not doing the thing she wanted me to do, when everything else she was able to coerce and manipulate. And it's like, fine, whatever. Whatever, it is what it is. But yeah, I sent Ben a message earlier and told him that I told my mom I didn't think she wanted me to write the eulogy. I wasn't the one that they wanted writing the eulogy. And I started this little spiel to him, just to Ben, about it. It's like, what am I going to say for my grandfather, the person who made sure to keep this family locked into a toxic system where we could abuse one another, manipulate each other, and treat specific individuals like they didn't mean shit because they didn't. And that mainly me and my one cousin more than any of the others. But yeah, it's like, they're not going to want me to, they're not ready to hear what I'm going to have to say if they make me talk. And I'll probably just do my best at the funeral to steer clear of people that I know are going to tell me how sorry they feel about things. Because I know if I start talking, people are going to be pretty uncomfortable. Like my mom's friend the other day saying she was scared because she got a message from my mom, sounded a certain way, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, she would be glad you're scared. It's like, me, on the other hand, get it over with. So, finally got that part of it over with. So now we can be in this next weird spot for a while. And then, at some point it becomes, once we get his handled and he's planted in the ground, then we can go to obsessing over my grandma's next, right? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like that whole thing started out of convenience, and here lately I've been thinking a lot. It's like my dad started doing laundry, and that's part of it because he doesn't give a shit about paying attention to if stuff should be washed a certain way or not. So that was the big thing that started it. But I hadn't got it separated yet, but I am doing laundry so I can get it completely separated and then maintain that separation. So I'll figure whatever else out after that. Yeah. But I don't know. Uh-oh. I don't know what that was. My brother said something about a conflict, and it looked like on Tuesday. So was something sent out about a funeral and I just missed it? I don't know. I'll get to that later. I mean, they were at the funeral home working on stuff earlier. I know that much. I had to go over to my grandma's house to shut off the crock pot that my mom had started cooking dinner for everybody because her friend is going to be bringing dinner for everybody instead. So, yeah. My brother was talking, yesterday or the day before, I don't even remember. We were talking about something with my mom, and he was talking about his therapy group. In the one group, he said something about the situation, and I don't remember how he said the therapist responded, but the next time he said something along a similar line, because I told him that I have a hard time believing what my mom told him, and I was wondering if it might be more of a manipulation tactic to play on his sensitivities because he is a good guy and always has been, and has very much been manipulated along the way by our mother, as I have as well. And he was telling me the story about something that he was talking about with her, and said that the second therapist that he mentioned it in the group session to looked at him and said, "That's an abusive tactic right there." And he said that was one of the first, I think, things that really stood out, that other people are seeing that the stuff you're saying was a problem before you're realizing why you're at the place you're at now, having issues that you have to work through. And it's like, it's exactly because of all this just toxic family bullshit. And yeah, not wanting to go hang out with them at all this evening, but my headphones are being charged. Yeah, my headphones are kind of pissing me off at this point because my little earbuds are just about shot. I don't know what just happened, but my brother said, I bet you can dig my hole faster or something. So it's like, oh, you're getting ready to get killed or something. Okay, we're gonna see what's happening, I guess. Well, here's in a couple minutes. But yeah. And like I've just kept saying, it's like stuff with my ex, it's like the reason I got into that situation was because this is the shit that I've grown up with, and I always knew divorce was on my path because that had to be something that really showed me, the accumulation of all this toxicity in the growing up environment, and just along the life path after. Well, I mean, like, I'm freaking 41. I shouldn't have to be living with my parents right now, right? I mean, it's one thing to have to move back in with them because I'm getting a divorce. It's another that I'm locked into this toxic situation that I can't get out of because I wasn't raised to be my own person. And now I'm having to figure it out on my own. It's like everybody I was friends with growing up, they're all like, they have their own families and, their own little lives. And it's like every single time anything's happened, like the first time I went to see Tyler at the hospital and my mom wanted to go with me. It's like, it's one thing to go together because you're going to the same place. It's another to go because everything's so tightly connected that you don't know how to do anything by yourself because you haven't been allowed to. And it's a weird dichotomy because it's a both and situation and I can see both sides of it. But then at the same time, like when we were at his funeral and I'm there with my mom and dad and we passed my ex, the guy that I dated for 4 years in high school. Sophomore year high school to sophomore year in undergrad. It's like, I should have been able to look at him and say hi. That's not a big deal. For some reason, I about crumbled because it's like, I have nothing to show for where I'm at in my life. Everything's, gone to crap and I don't know how to fix any of it. So it's just, I encounter people and like I stumble along the way because I don't know why I'm there. I don't know how to get disconnected or whatever, right? So obviously it's something I've been working on through this whole channel, but still it's like just that it's been this kind of problematic issue to begin with, and that's the only reason that I'm 41 and still living with my parents while all this shit is going on. And I've talked about how I keep getting those cards, like the Michael and Faith card from the Kyle Gray Divine Oracle deck, where it talks about consider yourself divinely planted. Where you are is where you are most needed at this point in time. It's just like, I can't tell you how many times that card has come out to see me in the past, I think years since I got it. It's like, oh, here we go again. Yep. And that's not the only place I've gotten that message from. There's other decks and, even stuff that I've been drawn to listen to on YouTube or whatever. Like the big thing is patience and you're on the right path. Just have patience and keep going. It's like, fuck. So I don't know at what point it's all going to blow up, but it's going to happen at some point. Like the deal with the hospital the one day when my mom and her middle sister were trying to move my grandfather from the chair to the bed because he had bullied them into it. So instead of using common sense and thinking we're at the hospital, we need to call the nurse in here to do it, they started doing it because he was bullying them. And then, okay, the part where in August, after he had his surgery on his leg, he wouldn't tell the nurses he was in pain. He wouldn't tell anybody on the medical staff that his leg hurt. He had to wait until they left, and then he'd start bitching at my mom and her sisters and my grandma. And it's like, they were just here. They're the ones that are in charge of the medicine. Why didn't you tell them? Oh, because we got to put on a brave face or something, and nope, no pain. And then as soon as they leave, then like bitch about it and have a little meltdown because it hurt so bad and you just told them no, so they didn't give you pain medicine. But yeah, the one day, that they were doing that at the hospital, moving him without paying attention to the fact that they were in a hospital and needed to call the nurses in. And then my uncle got there and I was just like bitching up a storm. It's like, no, we got to let the old man bully us into doing something stupid so we might hurt him and us in the process. It's like, rather than paying the people who are here, getting paid to be here to do this stuff. Yeah. It's like, this is just stupid. Literally stupid. I was thinking there was something else I wanted to mention today, and I don't know what it was. But yeah, I'm really just, I'm finding other things to make sure to mention on being grateful for for the universe, and then bitching about this on my little channel for the time being. But like, you know, we got our walk in today, and we're back into our hiding spot at the cemetery on this little back road that doesn't go anywhere, because I was like, I'm pretty sure my family won't come in here today, since, you know, they don't need to visit the we're not burying him today. They were at the funeral home getting everything set up, and then yeah, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't, but it's like, just in case, I'm gonna go back to the hidey spot. Because if I parked up front and anybody came in, like, they're in like, as you come in the back right corner as you're facing the back of the cemetery, you know, in that section. And I mean, this is kind of way back of the middle, because okay, the other section, it doesn't go back as far as this original part of the cemetery does, but it's just like, this is a better hidden spot. So if they do happen to come in and end up around the stone for any reason, you know, because they put that headstone there like 20 years ago with an old picture on it. It's like, well, why bother with that picture? I don't even like the picture, but I mean, whatever. To me, now that I'm looking at it, it just looks like somebody that was an energy vampire for his entire family and was living off everybody else's energy. You know, but yeah, whatever. Is what it is. It was feeling like, you know, I mentioned yesterday or the day before that I started the video, it was like feeling like I looked really old. It's like, I've been feeling like that a lot when I'm getting ready for the day. It's like, why does everything suck right now? It's just, you know, and this is just where I'm at. And I know, yes, aging is a natural thing, and as I am 41, so it's, but at the same time, I've spent a lot of time crying over the past few months, and trying to sort things out. So, like, this morning was another one of those days where I was awake from like 4 till 7:30. And yeah, I could have just gotten up, but then it's like, by the time I get to that point, then I'm like really tired again, you know. And sometimes I get up and write. Today I didn't. I just laid there and was kind of thinking about stuff. But it's like, there's so many of these where it's like my sleep schedule is kind of erratic, and it's fairly consistently erratic, but it's still erratic nonetheless. So I'm still tired all the time. But we got our walk in. My little Zibby, like, hey, Zibby. She didn't want to talk about it. Kidgy. Yeah, here we go. Hi, buddy. Yeah. Anyway, I guess we'll see what this other drama is, because I don't really have anything else I think I want to include today. I just... I am grateful that this is not a forever thing, and this is just a temporary phase. I will say that. And I'm grateful that I have my dogs here with me to have my little backup support team while I got to deal with stupid shit. Yeah. And that they've been around in the time frame that I get told that I'm too sensitive or whatever else, and just dealing with family bullshit otherwise. It's 3:33, of course it is. Just happened to look at the clock right there. Here. Nope, it changed. He likes to do that, right? Yeah. It was 3:33, and as soon as it flipped, it's 3:34. Yeah, because it just wanted to prove that it wasn't. Yeah. I think that's one of those things, like, sometimes, usually, I can get it, like, okay, my friend Roxy, I'll send her a message, and because we're both go back and forth on that now. She does a lot of the synchronicities as well these days. And so she'll send me something like, it's at 11:11 when it's 11:11. And every now and then it's like, it delays just enough so it's like, oh, but it was there. It's like, it was there because it's really close, but yeah, whatever. Not like it's 3:37 and I flipped the camera to show it was 3:33. Yeah. It just happened to change. No big deal. I figure I point this stuff out a lot, and then it's like I usually don't show anything to support that is the case, but I guess I might as well on some of it. But there's a lot of things like, like I've talked about, like different twin flame stuff, like the marks and the scars and the knowing who my twin flame is, and yet not saying specifically who he is to this channel, at least at this point in time, but at the same time communicating things that I can demonstrate later, like the stones, like the one guy that I talked about that I thought the stone stood out because it was in a different shape, which is, I started thinking it was like a raindrop or a teardrop or something, and it's like, oh, it's candle flame, duh. But it's been there since 2001 when the guy died. I thought it stood out because he was born in the same year my brother was, but then I realized back in the fall that he died on my twin flame's birthday. And it's like, oh, that's what the bigger story was there, and then the next stone behind that is the grandfather of a kid I went to school with who was born, the grandfather had my birth date. And then the one behind that was somebody that was born on my twin flame's birthday. And then the one past that was somebody that was born on Tyler's death date. So it's like, there's 4 right in a row, and they've been there for a really long time. But the first one with the death date, that's my twin flame's birth date, was the one that I've always paid more attention to, and now I realize it's because of this other detail that I wasn't ready to receive it at the time. But I think a big part of the purpose of my channel is me pointing out things along the way that I can't prove that, I'm not going to tell you who he is before he knows who he is, obviously. And he finds his way to me, and then I can demonstrate, or like the like little 1/10 of a mile strip that has several people that have some version of his name on there. It's like, yep, that's relevant for me too. And these are stones that I've been walking past for years. Never occurred to me that they were anything more than just people that died, but it's at the same time, now I'm realizing it's name standing out, another way this name has been following me my entire life. That's what that point was. Okay. The other day, my grandfather was still in the hospital. I told the story about when the nurses were dealing with my grandfather and going to the bathroom and all that stuff, and everybody else was in the waiting room. So it's my mom, my aunt and uncle, me, my grandma, my dad. I think that was all of us. So we're all out in this waiting room. And he starts talking, or he asks this guy if he is related to this other guy that my dad used to work with. And the guy says, well, it depends on which one you're talking about, because apparently there were like 3 of them that he had worked, or 3 of them in the family, 1 of them that my dad had worked with. And the guy told my dad that the brother he'd asked about had passed away last year, the day after Thanksgiving, and it's like, ooh, that feels kind of foreboding, like a warning of sorts, right? Or like a foreshadowing, if you will. And as he was going back over to the elevator, my dad says, "Hey, what's your name?" And it of course is the Twin Flame name. It's like, huh. And that whole conversation, if I wasn't there at that exact moment, I would have missed that name pop up again, right? But there it was. And then a couple days after that, I went in and I was going to stop at the bathroom before I went into where they were at. And I passed this woman who I knew was a parent to somebody that my mom had used to babysit. It was 2 kids. Okay. And the one of them, the daughter, that was, she was I think a year or 2 older than me. She stole a bunch of my stuff when we were little and like took it to school and gave it away and that kind of thing. So it's like, she had a bunch of other issues that we learned about later, but still, that was like the big thing there. But her little brother also had this name. And her little brother, I've mentioned on here having the name before because their dad also had that name. It's like, but of course, when I was at the hospital and I passed this lady and she didn't recognize me, but I recognized her. And I went into the bathroom and it's like, I couldn't remember her name immediately. It was like, what was it? And then it's like, then the name popped into my head and it's like, oh yeah, that kid's mom. It's like, so there's the name popping up again. And then, there was a sign, at this, one of the court buildings or something that when I was on my way home that had something where this name was on it again. And it's like, dudes, that is a lot in a short span of time. And it's just like, keeps popping up in these little places. It's like, there it is again. Yeah. So yeah. But I think, like I said, I think that's a big part of my channel is for me to tell these stories and to give different little reference points that will be later be provable once, once I do actually meet him in person. And, whatever's meant to be gets to be. So, yeah. Because there's like all those stones, like my Twin Flame books that I write in, that I'm on number 8 now. Not all of them talk specifically about who he is, but the first one definitely does, the first entry that I wrote. And the current one has mentioned him, obviously. I mean, he'll eventually get to read them if he wants to. But yeah. Yeah. But, it's me figuring stuff out and keeping track of things for myself while also dealing with these other things that show time frame, and then we can refer back, because like this, obviously, I mean, not everybody's gonna have any idea who to find that's got the freckles and the scar. And at this point, I mean, there's nothing exciting enough about me for anybody to care on that, finding that stuff out anyway. And then like, okay, the high school boyfriend who had the little brother by the same name. It's like, obviously I can't change who that is. So I think that's a big part of my purpose, is just to keep talking about these things and throwing them out there. So when the time comes, all this stuff will show, oh, yep, you can know. By turning within, you can figure out the stuff that has been there to guide you along the way and to keep you moving in the right direction, kind of a thing. Yeah, that's a big part of this. That's also a big part of why it's so slow starting out, and why, like when I started, and even still, I'm not really telling anybody I'm doing this thing. So anybody that finds me because the universe put me in front of them in some way, shape, or form, and they clicked on my video and chose to stay or not, right? So, that's also a big part of it, is just getting out and being seen, because one of these days, when the stuff starts coming together, I mean, I kind of stand out in a crowd a little bit, but the colored hair and all that fun stuff. Yeah, that's one of those things. Like, my mom and I were talking at one point. I don't remember what we were joking around about, but she said something about blend in. It's like, yeah, me with my green, purple, and pink hair and blend in. It's like, that doesn't work. And that's like part of the purpose too, is just being me, and eventually I'll get where I'm meant to be, and then it'll all come together, and hey, I'm at 100 and however many videos at this point in time, and a bunch of them mention this kind of stuff or talk about other things that have been guiding me along the way, like the dreams. So yeah. Looked up right at 5:15 on the timer. That's my great grandma. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up so I can go feed the dogs and figure out what else I have to do and see what my brother's sending me messages about and all that fun stuff. So, as always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see ya.